Graduate Leadership Fellows program. So I'm pretty much using all my degrees in the work I do now. As a sports reporter, I work with the Washington football team as a digital and broadcast host, hosting 2 other digital shows and 1 other television shows on NBC Sports Washington. I also work with Fox Sports Radio locally here in the DC area, where I have my own radio show and podcast called Listen with KNN. As a communication specialist, I'm working with a nonprofit education group now called America's Promise Alliance. And then as an event host, I just host lots of different events, of course, now virtually, but in sports realm, policy realm, politics, pretty much anything. And so kind of getting to use my public speaking skills. So just a little about me and what I'm currently doing and a little bit about my journey. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Great, thank you, Kelsey. Lesley, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm Lesley Osmont. It's nice to meet everyone. I am a freelance designer and illustrator, which I started the freelance journey in 2019, and then got an LLC in 2020. Before that, I graduated in 2014 from the University of Maryland as an arts major with a concentration in design. And from there, I worked in design in the corporate world for about 3 different jobs until I decided to start freelancing. So that includes, I worked in-house at a leather goods company in Annapolis called Hobo Bags, doing like a whole gamut of graphic design for them. From there, I was hired by Verizon Media for interaction design. So UX, UI, animation, and all things web design and advertising. And from there, I was hired by Web Mason Marketing, so a more broad marketing agency. So that included branding design, print design, and website design as well. And in 2019, I wanted to have a little more freedom over my career and moved to Denver, which is where I'm currently located. So that started me on the freelance path because it does offer you a lot of that personal space to make decisions about your own career. So I've been freelance since then, working for a host of different clients, including a healthcare company, a marketing agency, electrical company, coffee company, data visualization company, to name a few. And I'm so happy to be here with you all today.
Great, thank you so much, Lesley. And last but not least, Emily.
Hi guys, I am also a UMD alum. I graduated in 2016 from the English department. And after that, I went to the Columbia Publishing course, which was a six-week course that covered book publishing and media coverage, just because like I wanted to get a little bit more of an idea of the industry that I was going into. And soon after that, I started working at BuzzFeed Nifty, writing about home and crafts and the works. Eventually started doing some more lifestyle stuff for them when I started working full time. And I was there for a little over 2 years. And it was a great experience. But towards the end, I was ready to start thinking about freelance because I kind of wanted to get a little bit of a different experience. You know, I learned a lot about writing for BuzzFeed and I got really good at it, but I wanted to learn about writing for like different types of publications, different types of industries, the works. But you know, it is very intimidating to work as a freelancer. So I, you know, kind of sat on it for a while. And ironically, I was very lucky to be part of the very dramatic and very public layoffs that they had. So I had a little bit of severance to keep me going for a while, to help me kind of like lay the foundations, lay the groundwork, because it is a lot to learn to start off, and that was really helpful. So I did that for a while. I did a lot of lifestyle work. I did marketing content. I wrote for real estate agents. I wrote for tech, like UX UI companies. I did a couple of big journalism pieces. I did a literary essay. Like, I got exactly what I wanted out of freelance, which was to get a huge range of experience and to learn a lot about a lot of different things. And I think that that's the great thing about freelance. And a little bit of an aside, I am no longer a freelancer. I, about a month ago, started as the editor for Wix Restaurant's upcoming blog, which ties into the story. I'll get to that later. So yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Emily. And I think that's a final, that final point is a good one too, in that freelance work can be everything that you do, but it doesn't have to be everything that you do. You can use it to supplement another career path that you have as well. So thank you all very much for the introductions. And this next question, feel free to pop in, you know, as you have an idea about what you might want to say. The next question I have is, what are some of the most important things that you've learned about freelance work, either in general or in your specific field?
I'm happy to pop in, Kevin, and if it's okay for me to share my screen quickly.
Yeah, Kate, I believe you might be the host if you want to give Lesley screen share.
No problem, just did.
Okay, thank you. All right. Just to give you guys a little context while I'm talking. Some things that freelance has meant to my career and some of those most important things that I've learned. I think I brought this up in my last point, is sort of what I ended with, but given me creative control, being that it allowed me to move to where I wanted to live and kind of start that lifestyle that I wanted to enjoy. It's also given me business knowledge, so of finances and taxes. Since you are the master of your own destiny there, you also have to manage projects yourself instead of having that done for you. Traditionally in a job where you're employed, that's taken care of by someone else and that's their full-time job. So you have to take that on yourself. As well as client relations, you really have to be on top of communicating and getting that new business for yourself. The legal kind of goes into the finances and taxes piece, as well as creating contracts and invoices that cover loopholes of legal. Sales kind of goes right into that client relations as well. Marketing and exposure, kind of self-explanatory. And specifically for me, understanding complex design systems, because I do have to not only manage the design, but that project management and how I'm running my business. I've gotten really efficient at processes and understanding not only how my design system should work, but then how that design system fits into my whole business model. On top of that, since you are charging, you know, your own rate and have to account for all of your lifestyle budget, you have a really good understanding of your value of your work and your time, and it's usually a lot more than you're kind of initially told. You always have to be fighting for that for yourself. That's like a really important one. And there's a direct correlation between the hours you put in and the work that you do and the return you get from seeing sales and new clients and new work. You have to maintain those relationships. And then it's also given me huge personal freedom and an opportunity to shape my own schedule and future. And I think I'm the kind of person that really likes change and adaptability, and it keeps me like from being bored, which I really like. So those are a few of my most important points. And I can stop sharing now too.
I guess I can hop in next. And wow, Lesley, I love the PowerPoint presentation. I think it's great to add visual context. And I'll say just a little bit more about my story. So I started freelancing kind of immediately out of college. It was not the initial plan, but I just saw there was different opportunities. And in media and broadcast work, not all of those opportunities pay well, right? So you have to live in this area and have to suffice yourself. So I'll start with the finances part that Lesley touched on. And I think that's the biggest one I'd say you have to learn. You have to, and I'm still learning, I will put that out there, how much your value is, and essentially how much about your work, meaning how much you'll charge for your freelance work. And of course, the more experience you get in that work and using your degree, you will find that out. But it's so important to know that. And I think for me too, learning the power of contracts. And this is when I will go to my next point. It's good to network. And I'll say a lot of my opportunities just come from networking and people referring me, but also me reaching out. And so for me, a big part of my work is posting my work on social media, especially for my sports reporting work, because people will reach out in my DMs. For instance, before I got on this call, I was on a call with Special Olympics, and I'll be working on a special project with them, doing some broadcast work for them this July for their 100th anniversary. That really all came from LinkedIn connections and people referring me. So I think networking is super powerful, and also knowing where to post your work. And so again, in my realm, doing broadcast work, that means I'm posting my stories, I'm posting my radio work, I'm posting my television work, so people can always kind of keep in contact with me. But again, it goes back to Leslie's point of knowing how much to charge. And I will tell you guys, because I'm in the midst of this, it is tax season, and tax season can be a lot for a freelancer, because when you have so many different sources of income, you're trying to remember all of those sources of income. And obviously, and I will say that with that too, make sure that you're getting enough money for enough bang for your buck. I think Lesley touched on that, and make sure it's worth your time. Freelancing gives you a very busy schedule, right? And so I think this also goes to the time management that I've had to learn and making the most of my day, because when you work for so many different people, I have so many different deliverables that I have to make sure get honored, right? Because people want to work for me because they know they can trust me, and they know I make my commitments. And so I think having that good time management is important. Understanding your finances, but also just the power of networking. And I'd say also, when it goes back to time management, knowing what you can take on. Sometimes I think you realize, there's so many great projects that you want to be a part of, but if you have 24 hours in the day, no matter how much you sleep, and then your work time, and then also something I've been trying to put first too is my mental health time and my me time. How much can I put on into each project? And so for me, like during football season, I had to take less projects because I was doing a lot more work with the Washington football team, right? It's super busy. Now it's kind of the off season, but now I'm prepping again for the NFL draft. So now I'm having to work with people and try to make my schedule a little bit more flexible so I can still get things done. And so I think those are probably the four most important things: time management, networking, again, because freelance opportunities, it's so important, but word of mouth, social media, and people talking, to the power of your work, finances, and just really knowing your value and your worth, I think would be the biggest things. And also I'd say, like, track your experience. If you've been in this game 10 years, you should kind of know your value, meaning it's great to network with other people who are doing similar things. So I'm in many group chats and circles with other freelancers and communicators, kind of talking with them. And if you get friendly enough with them, they will tell you what they charge, and you can kind of measure up with them. And it will help you just kind of know what the market rate is. And also I have great friends that are lawyers, and they also help me with contracts and things like that, contract language. And even knowing the power of negotiating. And I'd say the power of negotiating is a huge thing, because sometimes as a freelancer, they will try to pay you less. Don't let them do that to you. And that's when knowing how to negotiate can be your friend.
Lesley and Kelsey made all amazing points. Totally. I hope you guys took notes, because that was all great. I'm basically just going to piggyback on a lot of that. In my experience, freelance is a very, very collaborative a group of people. It is a really collaborative industry. And despite the fact that it is super competitive, at least, in writing, I'm sure it is in broadcast, everybody's kind of really willing to help each other. They're willing to help craft your pitches. They're willing to help you craft emails to editors who maybe aren't, responding to your negotiations, or aren't responding to you in general. That's happened to me. That is something that you have to prepare for, is to have a really, really thick skin, and to be really ready to stand up for yourself at all times. That is one of the best and worst things of being a freelancer, is you are your own advocate. It takes a lot to learn, but you definitely learn how to speak up for yourself, and that nobody is going to know what you need or want unless you tell them. And I think that is really vital to know. And on the point about networking, I also think that it's really important to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, which I was really hesitant to do. And I didn't understand the value. I didn't understand why anybody was going to answer me like a total rando with not the most like amazing experience, but some people are very, very responsive to it. And it's actually how I got my full-time job now. I reached out to the head of content of Wix, just asking, you know, like, hey, I'm a freelancer. If you guys need any help, I'd love to work with you, figure out how I can contribute to your work. And just like, you know, we're actually looking for editors. That's it. You know, and that's happened with you know, editors in chief, like they are very responsive. And I think that that's probably how they got their job, is just by being really on top of all of their emails and all of their LinkedIn. So don't worry about being like, you know, wasting anybody's time or being invasive. Just, I mean, well, make sure that you are really, really crafting your pitches and your introductions, because, you know, a messy email, like on the other side, being on the other side now, like that will throw me off. You know, if you aren't being super personable and you know, showing that you can deliver clean copy very quickly, unfortunately, it's again, it's a very tight market. There's a lot of people out there who are doing really, really, really amazing work, and it is very hard to stand out. So yeah, I think that it is just, it's finding what you're good at, being really resourceful and organized. Organization is going to be like your number one best friend. And it's going to be really hard to figure out a good system for it, but it is going to help you with your taxes, and it is going to help you figure out how much money you need to make in order to support yourself. I also think that Kevin made a really good point, which is that you don't have to be a full-time freelancer. And often, especially with writing, which doesn't always pay well, especially if you want to really focus on the projects that you're really passionate about, it does help to have a side job, like a part-time role that doesn't suck up all of your creativity. I worked in a restaurant for a while, and that, you know, it was exhausting, but it really, really helped me like manage the financial anxieties that can keep you from pursuing the projects that you got into it to pursue.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily, and Kelsey and Lesley as well. I appreciate the insight from your answers. Also, just want to quickly point out our last panelist has arrived as well, Bryonna. And so, Bryonna, do you want to just take a moment to introduce yourself and to let us know a little bit about how freelance has factored into your career?
Yes, apologies for my delay, everyone. Hi, my name is Brianna Head. I am the CEO of Brains by Bree Communications Consulting, and I got into freelancing straight out of college, actually, when I graduated from the University of Maryland, completely out of frustration. I was not working in the industry that I wanted to work in, but I had a tremendous mentor that was willing to sort of shift clients my way. So I started contracting on different accounts as a freelancer and doing public relations and marketing. And it has definitely opened up a lot of opportunities for me to work in various industries and to keep life interesting. I'll say that.
Great. Thank you so much, Bryonna. Appreciate you being here. Great. So I think the next question that I'll pose to our panelists piggybacks off the last question I asked and some of the answers that they gave. You know, so for someone who is looking to get started for the first time ever in freelance work, what are some of those first steps that you might recommend they take? You know, how might you recommend that they seek out some opportunities? What kind of thoughts do you have in that realm? And Bryonna, I said before, at this point, we're kind of feel free to jump in as you might have a thought.
So for me, again, I got into freelancing just from my mentor. So talk to, you know, people that you're connected with. You never know who knows who and who knows about what opportunities. And so a lot of the times with my opportunities in the beginning, when I was looking for a job and I didn't really know what freelancing was, they didn't have the money to bring me on full time, but they had the money to bring me on for a specific project or a specific event or things of that nature. So definitely talk to the people you know, the alumni, the people at the Career Center at University of Maryland. Again, you don't know who knows who. And then also freelancing has become quite the thing now. So there are a lot of websites like Upwork, and there's another one that I'm blanking on, where there are freelancing opportunities that you can take advantage of.
Yeah, because I can hop in. I completely agree with everything Brianna said. I would say it goes back to my point about networking and really using your network. I like to say as your net worth, because there's always money out there and there are always opportunities. And I would say, going back to Emily's point, you have to be aggressive. You have to go look for these freelance opportunities. Now, yes, sometimes they will find you, but I think that comes once you've kind of established yourself. But when you're first starting, there are a lot of job boards that have freelance opportunities, and it doesn't only have to be freelance job boards. Any job board will probably have something that says freelance, because, you know, companies now, especially in the remote space, I think there actually are more opportunities for people to freelance, because we're realizing just the flexibility of work. But I also say, this is when it goes back to my point about social media and just actively always searching and looking. People will tweet out job opportunities, right? They'll post them on LinkedIn. I've seen them on Facebook, even if you still use Facebook. And it's just like the power of connecting. So I think the biggest thing is making sure that you connect with people and the right people. And then, like Brianna said, if you have a mentor, reach out to your mentors. Your mentors will probably like have a connection for you or can connect you to somebody. I think I did the same thing when I was leaving Maryland. I stayed close with my journalism professors, and they were able to tell me about different opportunities that were out in the world. And then of course, those people connected me with new people. And I'd say also just remember to do a good job. When you do a good job at a freelance work, people will refer you to other people. So I think that's very important starting out, because you want a good name for yourself, right? And you want a good reputation for yourself. So it's really vital and really crucial.
I can hop in from there. Totally agree with all of the points about making connections. You definitely need to have people in your corner. And I would say on top of that, I didn't start out freelancing right out of college. I, got a little bit of experience under my belt and spent about 5 years making those connections and gaining the experience that's really helped me to start my career. So you can always start small if it's a little too overwhelming to start right away, where you can have a full-time job and supplement it with freelance. And then in addition to that, I have asked employers to pay for courses for me to like upskill myself that I wouldn't have been able to afford on my own. By making the point that this makes me a better asset to your company. And they want those people that are, able to give them a little more. So that's worked for me for a couple different employers. So you can always start small there and supplement with freelance until you feel ready. I would also say, in addition to joining networks, like going outside of your comfort zone. So saying yes to projects, like even if they seem scary, like I wouldn't say like lying about your skill set, but definitely taking on things and continuing to upskill and continuing to reach for more, basically, even if it feels like a little bit overwhelming, and just do one thing at a time. And then as well as on top of that, doing memorable work. So even if the work it feels small scale, but if you are super organized, or if you are a really good communicator, like make sure that your work, not only the work itself, but how you are approaching that work is memorable, because people are more likely to come back to a freelancer that they know and trust. And then do your research as well. Like before I started, I did a lot of research on how to get an LLC, and then what time tracking and accounting software should I use. And I ended up hiring an accountant, and that was a great decision. But before that, I had to gain a lot of that business knowledge myself. And then, making that budget. What skills do I have, and what skills do I want to grow? And then how do I write a proposal, and how do I draft up a contract? And that's just all research that you can, reach out to mentors, look at books. I mentioned in the chat the pricing and ethical guidelines for how I, referenced up-to-date pricing for design. And And then, what are those legal contracts? Like reach out to people in law, and then look at different software that allows you to draft up contracts and like fill in the blanks for your industry. So.
To piggyback off of something that Lesley said, I think that it's a really important point that to think of freelance as a long game. A lot of it is just building a reputation, building your knowledge, building your network. And it's not all going to happen right away. I think it's very, very easy to get downtrodden in the beginning because it is super, super intimidating and super hard, especially when you're starting right out of school, which, there is no too early to start. I recently got an email from somebody who was still in college, and I was super impressed with her initiative and the fact that she found my, tweet while she was obviously taking her courses and doing a bunch of other stuff. I thought that was super impressive. So, and also there's something that I learned pretty early on, which is that they don't actually, a lot of editors don't care if you have clips. It's important to have clips, but if you send a good pitch, if you send a great email explaining why your experience and what you've learned can benefit them, they don't care if you haven't been published in like the Washington Post. Like it's not relevant. I heard of somebody who got published in the Atlantic with 0 alternative clips. Like they were right out of college and they got that. So if that doesn't prove something to you, and a couple more specific things that are more just to journalists or writers, I highly, highly recommend Study Hall. They are great even if you aren't a freelancer because they cover media. They talk about the landscape, what's happening. It is a constantly shifting environment. So it's good to know what's happening. And it's also a built-in community. They have a Slack room. They have Google listservs where you can ask your questions and people will answer. Just, it's all helpful to somebody else. So everybody really, really contributes, and it's very cool and it's very helpful. Lindy Alexander runs the Freelancers Year, and she is brilliant. She has a lot of really good advice. I actually took her course when some of my, regular clients had like some of that regular work had dried up. Like at the very beginning of the pandemic, I decided to use that time to take that course, and it was super informative and kind of gave me permission to do some of the things that felt out of my comfort zone, or, like finding branded work, which is where the money is, and, how to send that networking email. It's not like a natural thing. So you obviously have to learn, what a good template is, like what you need to communicate to these editors. Like it is very something that you really have to learn. Yeah, I think that's it.
Great. Thank you all so much for your insight. I think there are many great points being made, especially about the value of networking and freelance work. I mean, and just in general, whether or not you're in freelance work, but especially in freelance work, and especially about knowing your value. And I think, along the points of knowing your value that were being made, and kind of the financial and the living, living as a freelancer, those pieces, it made a question come to mind that I think would be important to bring up, that I hadn't mentioned to you all before, but I think is important to still ask. And so, as a freelancer, obviously a big part of living is still figuring out how to maybe get benefits that maybe like full-time employers might give you, like health insurance or retirement or anything else in that realm. Like how is that something that factors into, a freelancer's path? And I know you all may have had other full-time jobs that do provide that at different moments too, but how does that look as a freelancer?
Well, I can't speak to it to a certain extent because I've always had another full-time job. I live a double life, guys. It's just what I do. I've been doing it for a very long time. But for some of my colleagues that are full-time freelancers, just from conversations that they've had with me, it can be tough having to navigate that road, especially in where we are now with the pandemic. I know last year it hit some freelancers very hard. And then with things such as the PPP loans that they were giving out, freelancers didn't qualify for those. And so having to navigate that space. And so I would definitely say before you jump into that world, do your research and definitely have a plan to make sure that you can sort of live the adult life while chasing your dreams at the same time. So, it's great and it's fun and every day can be a different experience, but take the initiative and the due diligence to make sure the legal aspects, especially also where you live, of what that means.
Yeah, I think I can follow up to what Brianna said. It's like Bryonna, I have a full-time job, but it's a flexible full-time job. And I will say I am upfront and honest with them. They know I do broadcast work that sometimes requires me to do press conferences, right, in the middle of the day, or do an interview in the middle of the day, but they trust me to do my work and get my work done. So I have that flexibility. And I'd say the biggest thing with freelancing is know what you want. So for me, like I live in the Washington DC area. Most of you all do. It's expensive to live here, right? And for me, like, I live in a newer building, which you can kind of see behind me. And so like, I know those are certain expenses. And I think for me, so for instance, I don't have a car. And so something I build into the events that I do is they pay for my transportation. If it's a TV event or something, they can pay to have a makeup artist and a hair person. So if that doesn't come out of my expenses or my budget. But again, I think this is when you get to a certain point. But I think the biggest thing is just really understanding your cost. And I know some people, I have friends that have full-time freelance out of right when we graduated college. And for instance, they didn't mind and they had parents that let them stay at home, right? So then they didn't have to pay rent. So they got to keep a lot of their money. They kind of had that flexibility to kind of take on smaller freelance jobs with the goal of getting a larger freelance job. So I really think it's great to like really sit down and do your expenses. This is something that I had to learn the hard way and really figure out how much I was putting out. I'm also a person that likes to eat out, just being fully honest, right? So I have to be able to finance that. And then now too, because I have the flexibility, there's a certain amount of money that I will do for freelance work. Like I have community and volunteer work, right? And that's a whole different thing. But now I can kind of demand a certain amount. I think you work to get to that point, but really understand your finances. And I will say something else that's super helpful is joining professional organizations. So of course, when COVID hit, that impacted us all, I think, especially the media industry. And so I'm a part of a lot of professional groups, one of which is the National Association of Black Journalists. And they had this freelance grant that we got. I forgot the company that gave it to them, but it was for freelancers who had been impacted. So one of my jobs is doing sideline reporting covering Georgetown University women's basketball program. But of course I couldn't do sideline reporting and the college basketball season got messed up because of COVID. So NABJ had a grant process that I applied through their sports task force, where we were able to get money to suffice for the money that we lost from our freelance gig. And so this is why, again, it goes back to networking, but joining professional organizations is a huge thing. I'm a member of the National Press Club. I know they have grant money for college students that go to historically Black colleges and universities, and freelancers. And so I think it just goes back to knowing where there is money and that there is support for you all. And I think especially, unfortunately, because of COVID, more companies have gotten more money to actually give freelancers to support them because our ways of life have changed. And kind of know what you want, know where you want to live. I know Lesley mentioned she was able to move to Denver. Maybe Denver is a place where you want to live, but look at the cost of living, in Denver. For instance, like being a freelancer in New York or LA, you're definitely going to have to make a certain amount of money if you want to live there comfortably. So I think it's just really being upfront and honest with yourself and what you want, but don't be afraid to have a full-time job and do it. I have a super busy schedule when it goes back to time management, but my schedule allows for me to work different opportunities. So I'm also teaching, I'm, doing freelance work, and I'm working full-time in communications, right? So my days are busy, but it's going back to time management, but it also gives me flexibility with my finances where I'm able to live comfortably in the DMV area.
Yeah, I think that that's a super important point. I think that that is one of the advantages of being a freelancer, especially if you're deciding to do it right out of college, is you don't have to move to New York in order to get a job. You can work from anywhere. I think I have a writer in Nigeria. Like, it does not matter. You can write from anywhere. And that is super advantageous because you can live with your parents if that works with them. Or you can live somewhere where the cost of living is not as like extravagant as it is here. You know, I moved to New York in order to work full time. And when I stopped, I fell in love with it here, so I couldn't leave. But that just meant that I deprioritized other things. I decided that I could live without, spending a bunch of money on Seamless or going out to restaurants all the time. Like, I would invite my friends over to have drinks or to have dinner, I got good at cooking for myself, which is easier when you're a freelancer and you can make your own schedule. You can plan your work around your life rather than having to do everything like in the 2 or 3 hours you have after work and before you have to like go to bed. And that is, an advantage that, is not something that should be overlooked. It was really, really useful. And I got really good at all of the stuff that everybody panicked about when the pandemic hit. I was like, I'm already working from home and not seeing anybody all day. And it is, it can be really, really tough. But it can also be great because you don't have coworkers who might be just distracting, or it's just, I personally love it. I hope that I don't have to go back to the office when everything opens back up. And yeah, so I think that it is just about being a really careful budgeter, just being really considerate with your money, and hopefully maybe getting some part-time or full-time work if those types of careers allow for that type of freelance. That is something that not all, like if you get a full-time staff writing job, which is hard, some don't love it if you freelance on the side. So that is something that you'll want to clarify or negotiate at the beginning. I think that, to Kelsey's point, like, transparency is super important. You don't want to be looking over your shoulder constantly. I think that's it.
Specifically to speak to, the budget of your life is something you have to be really, really adamant about. And I think that point makes some sense. Specifically for health insurance and dental insurance, for me, basically, I've been paying for my own insurance and contributing to my own 401k for a bit now. Both are very possible, and it seems intimidating, but there's lots of resources for you. I reached out directly to Cigna, and I was set up with someone who helped me and received a commission for helping me. She had every reason to get me as a client, basically, by getting me the best rate possible. So they want to work with you. So my insurance has not been an issue. I did just get dental insurance for the first time in a while. So that's a big one, but I would suggest getting dental insurance too. Don't wait on that. But for example, I don't have eye insurance. I basically looked at the cost of what eye insurance would cost me, or vision insurance would cost me, versus what, my once a year vision insurance plus my contacts would cost. And it actually was cheaper for me just to not have vision insurance. So that's an example of kind of being able to make your own choice there. And as far as having a 401k, if you've had a full-time job before, or you do have a full-time job, you can contribute to that same 401k on your own at any time. You just have to reach out directly. I personally deal with Fidelity, and I moved my 401k from previous full-time jobs into my own Fidelity specific 401k, and I can contribute to it whenever I want. And so that's always available for you. And I would just reach out directly to those companies and get on the phone with them, even if it is a little time consuming, to really just get the answers you want. They're used to people asking questions, especially if you explain your freelance role, and they'll be able to help you.
Great. Thank you all so much for that advice. I think so many good points were made. And I think, to reiterate a point that's been made by all of you many times, is certainly make sure that you're leaning on those that are in your networks and they're in your corner as you're navigating all of these processes. And so at this point, it's 4:45. I'd like to transition over to some student questions that we have. So Kate, do you want to start asking panelists questions from the students?
Sure, of course. And thank you for all the students who sent in questions. Some of you, after you sent in the question, I think the panelists answered it. So the panelists have done an excellent job at kind of anticipating some of the questions. But to follow up on a couple that I think we could talk a little bit more about, someone did ask, and you've touched on this a little bit, but I think you could go into a little more detail. Are there specific classes you've taken to understand the business side of this, or other resources that you would recommend to really just kind of figure out the legal, the taxes, that kind of business side of it?
For me, I attended the University of Google, and I use it frequently. I mean, really, Google, you can Google anything. So like, for example, I am expanding my business where I am hiring interns. And so to sort of take some of the load off of that. And so I've never hired anyone. It's always just been me, taking on these contracts. So I have no idea what that world is about. So definitely I Googled a lot. I called Maryland's, because I live in Maryland, Business Center, and asked questions, Small Business Administration. I probably called them enough. They know me by name. So yeah, just for me, I Google a lot. And then I talk to other people in the industry and see what do they do? Like, hey, have you ever been faced with this? What did you do in this sort of situation? So again, always have a network of people. If you have that question, I'm sure you're not the first person that has had that question. So don't be afraid to ask, and to be a part of that community and network.
To Brianna's point, I found out about the invoicing, contracting, and time tracking software that's helped me out so much in that legal and like business management piece. But I found that out through asking friends about like what software they use, because doing that all like by hand and, keeping your own like handwritten ledger or even like an Excel doc for me was just like not sustainable. So I use Bonsai, which is, thumbs up. I love it. It's totally for any kind of freelancer. It's worked great for design, but I time track there. I create projects and proposals. It even helps you generate proposals directly from Bonsai. There are other softwares like this. This is one that I just have personal experience with, and it has been great. You can track your finances. I can export all of my financial information for my accountant, which I mentioned before. I did hire an accountant once I got an LLC, and they helped me set up that LLC. I saw that in the chat as well, which you can do that on your own as far as like going through, IRS plus whatever state you're in. Like you can set that up through like the government, but I didn't feel like dealing with that. And it felt like more financially responsible for me to do freelance work in that time instead of taking the time to set up an LLC. So that's kind of always how my mind is working. It's like, where is the value of my time going? You kind of start to think that way as a freelancer, but that software has been beyond helpful for me. I know QuickBooks also helps other people. I don't have personal experience with that, but get a software that helps you.
Yeah, I think it just added, I mean, everything is really out there. You just have to search for it. Like what's been said, I've literally Googled or just searched on social media. And I think this goes back to my point about being a part of so many great groups. Since I'm a part of so many great groups, there's usually always panels or workshops or webinars. And I'm always like, when I have time joining them. So I was just on one, like, so you want to freelance, like, here's what to know. And so I think it's out there. It's just making sure that you're, again, part of the right groups. And then to software, I know something that I love a lot for my invoices. It's Invoice Simple. That's how I send out all of my invoices and keep track of all of my invoices, which of course just helps me during tax time. So I think it's out there. You have to search for it. I think there's like a YouTube video now, even for everything or anything that you want to learn. So I'd say that's the biggest thing. But use the people around you. So for instance, I teach at Doral College, an intro to podcasting and radio course, and we have a legal department. And one of my good colleagues now works there, and he's helping me trademark my podcast. And then he even told me that I need to trademark my name and myself. So I'm also going through that process with him. And because he knows me, he's doing it for cheaper, obviously, than he charges his other clients. And so I think this is, again, when it goes to just realizing that there's people around you sometimes who can help you through this process, and you're not in it alone. When I was at Maryland, I mean, I was a broadcast journalism major, but I was also like pre-law. So I would always go to the pre-law advisor. I worked a lot with Kate for opportunities. Like there's a lot of people around you who, if you don't know, like personally a lawyer, they can connect you with one. Luckily, even the law part at Maryland, the law school, getting connected with people there, like never be afraid to ask and reach out, and know like you're a community around you wants to help you. And I think it's a great thing about having, especially being a student, is that your university community wants to help you, and that you can start now. Don't wait till you graduate to start on any of these opportunities or to find out these types of things. Like find out now what it takes to get an LLC, find out now what it's going to take for you to do your own taxes. So that way, once you get into the work, you're kind of not behind, but you're ahead and you're really ready for the work that's coming.
Fantastic. The next question I have, hopefully this hasn't happened to any of you, but how would you rebound from a bad review so that it doesn't mess up your reputation professionally? Can be hypothetical.
I would say ask for good testimonials to almost combat that. If you have your own website, which as a freelancer, I assume you do, like if you've had a bad review, I would say get testimonials from happy clients. And I'm sure you have some, like people that will back you, and put those testimonials on your website and make those seen, just so that there's not only one review out there, there's other testimonials to balance.
Yeah, I'd say like really understand the power of having advocate and allies, and really knowing the levels to them. And so I would like question who this person that gave you a bad review, but like, you know, for instance, right? So James Brown is one of my mentor. Of course, James Brown is a pretty famous like sportscaster. So for instance, like if I can have him back me in the power of my work, and he's worked with me, knowing that I could call on him and, you know, knock on his door to value my work. But again, I think this goes back to just making sure that all of your work is out there and that you're promoting your work, so more people can see your work. And just knowing that one bad review won't be the end of you. Again, I mean, people might not like you or your work for any reason, right? Even though you might have done a great job at it. So realizing that that side will be out there. But again, if you have more people that can speak to your value and your relationships, I think it will help you. And this is why this is one thing I always preach, but it's to be kind to everyone. You should be kind to anyways, but you never know where your advocate, you know, will come from. Like when I cover Wizards games, I'm talking to the security guards, the ushers, like I know them by name, they know me by name, they know my, you know, my family, and I'm able to bring them to games. Because again, you just never know where an opportunity may come from, or where your name is being pushed and pushed through. And I think when you do that and you're genuinely a good person, I don't think that there's anything out there that will necessarily hurt you. But to Leslie's point, yes, as much as you can get people to comment good work to your work, it's great to be able to show that. And so like for me, for instance, for my podcast, you know, I'm always pushing people to leave a review on like the iTunes page or things like that, so people can really see it. And I think something too that I've learned is if you are working with the company, if you can get any type of written letter of support, do it, right? It's not going to hurt you, and it might always be good to like kind of have that in your pocket when you need to pull that up and pull that out. But again, really, I think at any organization you work at, find an advocate and an ally that will always speak to the work that you do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that it's to Kelsey's point, very important to promote yourself. and I mean everywhere. You know, you should definitely have a website where they can find all of your work, anything that they need to know about you. It's all there. That's super important and super fun to do. And I think that you can post on Twitter, you can post on Instagram, like everywhere is a place for you to find business and for people to find you. And I think that in order to avoid a bad review, which, you know, I haven't had many experiences with it. I think it's something to prevent it is, this is something that a veteran freelancer told me very early on, which was very helpful to me, which is like, if you turn in clean copy to a busy editor, they will want to hire you again. They have so much work to do. And if you can show them that they'll only have to put in minimal work in order to get your work up to where it needs to be, they will keep you on. And I think that establishing those regulars is super important, you know? So do your research on the publication, check out their voice, check out the types of sources that they like to use, make sure that the sources that you're looking at aren't people that they've already covered, because they can sometimes be a little iffy about that. Yeah, just see what their standards are based on what's already up there. And that's super helpful. I also paid for the AP style book because it answers basically every single question I've ever had about like grammar or style, or, you know, it's a really great resource. Their digital platform is amazing. They have everything there and they've answered every question imaginable. And I think that that's super helpful. And I also like, this is kind of to the last question. This is just something that like a lot of newer freelancers ask, something that I asked over and over again, which is, am I not as appealing of a freelancer because I didn't go to journalism school or like to grad school or to any of that? Like, I don't think that you ever have to feel bad about your education. I think that as long as you present your work in the best possible way and do the best work that you can, it doesn't matter. And a lot of freelancers who have gone to journalism school or to get an MFA or whatever it is will say that a lot of this stuff is learned on the job. And that has been my personal experience. And, you know, it's not easy and it creates a lot of imposter syndrome, but just as long as you're working as hard as you can, it's worth it. And it's worth not adding that extra load, that financial load. But there are, you know, smaller courses that you can pay for that aren't going to cost any money. So freelancers, as you can probably tell, are pretty chatty, and we are always willing to help you out. And so many of them have blogs or offer counseling, or, you know, like some have like pay what you can structures to it. So you can always find the resource out there with the budget that you have, and that's fine. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all so much. I think at this point, we're coming to a close on the panel, but I think one last question that I just want to briefly ask is, if students would like to reach out to any of you, what would be your preferred way of them getting in touch with you?
I think for me, it's just social media. They're all K Nelson, Twitter and Instagram. My Facebook, Kelsey Nicole Nelson. LinkedIn, as we've been preaching, feel free to send out that way. But the easiest way, my website is kelseynicolenelson.com. It literally, when you hit contact us, it sends me an email to my email. And I'm usually pretty quick to respond through that. So just feel free to reach out to me through any of those methods.
Email is going to be your best bet with me. Mine is eshwake@gmail.com. And I will definitely do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. I'm happy to help.
And for me, brainsbybree.com, Brains by Bree on all social. Feel free to reach out. I'm mostly on Twitter. Instagram is sometimey, but if you find me on Twitter, I will definitely respond.
For me, you can email me directly through my website. So that's losmontdesign.com. And that just sends me an email directly.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here and doing this today. We are very, very appreciative of your time and expertise. So can we get a virtual round of applause for all of our panelists today? Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to quickly, just before everyone runs off, share a slide that provides some good information and resources about some services that we can provide through the Career Center, as well as events that are upcoming and recordings that we have of past events that might be relevant for all of you today. You can always schedule an appointment with Kate or myself if you're an Arts and Humanities student. If you're not an Arts and Humanities student, you can visit Careers for Terps here as well to schedule an appointment with one of our career advisors in the main Career Center or in your own college. So thank you all so much again for being here today, and have a great night.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Kevin, I created some slides that are just the talking points that I had for this. Should I send that to you just in case, like, it would be a good resource for any of the students? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be great.